And that was my initial idea, was to use technology married with people on the ground to do a mixture of human intelligence and sort of technical intelligence collection on the ground, married with the ability to take action. I'm just being a little bit generic there because most of what we did was what you like call code word access, very classified work that we did for the U.S. government and our allies. And we did that very successfully. I bootstrapped that business. I begged people to invest in me. I had no financial network, but that's why when I look at founders now, I really understand how hard it is when you're someone who comes from a network where you don't have access to money. Yeah, and that's what we've definitely backed the insiders from time to time, but our fund is really designed to find those unknown, under-networked, undervalued founders all across the U.S. And I've had huge, multi-billion-dollar companies from that approach. I was that kind of guy who just didn't have access to money. I tried pitching, couldn't do it. I failed utterly at raising money, bootstrapped it by going back to Navy Federal Credit Union. They gave me an equity line of credit on my rental properties, and I used credit cards, and I bootstrapped that business.
Dear friends, it's Kurt Derdix, and welcome back. If this is your first time listening, I'm so glad you found us. And this week, I'm excited to share my conversation with my friend Paige Craig, the founder and general partner at Outlander VC, which is launching its third early stage VC fund. Paige has one of the most incredible stories of any of my friends, from his humble roots growing up in Sacramento to getting into Westpoint and then becoming a Marine and then starting the Lincoln Group, a private military company operating across the Middle East, Africa, Southeast Asia, that he grew to 1,000 full-time headcount. Paige sold the Lincoln Group and transitioned as an angel investor in the LA tech market, where I met him in 2008. And since then, he's had over 30 unicorns under his belt, including Postmates, Lyft, AngelList, Gusto, Wish, and dozens more. What Paige and the team at Outlander is doing is finding diamonds in the rough. They're finding founders that have what it takes to win, but don't traffic in the top schools, top cities, or the best social networks per se. And Paige's background all comes together to deliver returns that put him in the top 1% of tech investors. And I'm excited to share this honest and inspired conversation with one of the most interesting people that I know. So on to today's show. Here's Paige. Paige Craig, buddy, it's so good to see you. It's been a minute.
KD, dude, it's been ages, but I feel like I've known you a lifetime.
I know. You came into my life, or maybe we came into each other's lives at really interesting intersections for both of us. I remember meeting you December of 2008 at the Digital Family Reunion, which was an event that I produced. And you were sort of the belle of the ball. Like, everybody was so pumped that Paige Craig was coming into town. I think Nicole Jordan brought you to the party. And I think you met a bunch of friends that night. That's the first time I met you. I have an incredible photo of the two of us, and we've lived some life together since then. And you've been one of those people that's really inspired me to raise the bar and be a better human and be a better business person. And I'm so grateful to call you a friend. So thank you for that, my man.
Thank you, man. Yeah, that was an exciting time. I had just come back probably from Iraq or Afghanistan. I was selling my private military company that I had started several years before. And, I was literally just jumping into the world of angel investing and venture capital. So it was all new to me back then.
Yeah. You have such an incredible story. I probably know a little bit more about it than most people, since we've spent, quite a bit of time together. And, I want to press rewind and get into some of that stuff, but just to catch the audience up. You've been a really prolific angel investor, and I think some of your background in the military really helped you sort of ferret that, be able to have a nose for that. I guess in when you're pitching LPs, part of the LP pitch, I think, is really being able to have an edge on sourcing deals. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think for any venture fund, you want to have a unique strategy.
Yeah.
I think LPs also want to see that you have past performance,
Yeah.
and they need to trust you, right? So it's like they want to look at a fund manager, I think, and say, "Wow, this person or this team has a very unique strategy, a unique insight into the market, and they know how to source, select,
Yeah.
win, and then help those companies liquidate and make the money down the road." But also, it's got to be like, do they trust you? Right? They really have to understand who they're investing with. And ideally, you come to the table with a track record. And to your point, after selling my business, before I started the venture fund, I just wrote checks out of my own pocket for
Yeah.
a little over 4 years. I did like 70 deals, writing 50 to 250K checks. And I was, first money into Wish, did C rounds like Lyft, many great companies around Silicon Valley, LA, and New York, and that really set the stage for building my first venture fund in 2015. And now I'm
Yeah.
out raising my third venture fund.
Yeah. What are the size of the funds? What's the size of this fund?
So when I was an angel, I deployed in total almost $4 million.
Yeah.
Fund one, the institutional fund that we launched after that, was 28 million. Our second fund was about 80 million, and this latest fund will be 150 million. And we're out there talking to folks right now.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm raising my first fund. It's a $140 million open-ended fund, and we're doing private credit in the real estate space. So it's
Nice, man.
yeah.
People need money these days.
Say again.
People need money.
Yeah,
It's tight.
yeah. Well, I mean, we have a really interesting niche. So I mean, it's a completely different ball of wax than raising a closed-end VC fund. But I can teach a class in fund formation now, and it's incredible skill. And I'm very, very grateful to be on this journey and to be able to draw inspiration from friends and mentors like you that have, gone before, because there's a lot of similarities. So much of this stuff is chicken and egg. I mean, that makes a lot of sense that you had a really big success with Lincoln Group, which I'd love to talk a little bit about to give context, because it's such a fascinating, incredible story. And then you were writing checks. That makes sense. 4 million. I think I remember you telling me we were skiing one time that you sort of say, yeah, you got to have like 25, 30 million bucks like net worth to be able to like start writing those kind of checks without being, too crazy aggressive. And,
that depends on your risk profile, right?
Yeah. Of course.
I mean, I meet some founders out there barely have, probably a couple $100K to their name, and they're out there writing 5, 10K checks, and I really respect that. And I also, the funny thing is, any amount of money deployed with conviction and assistance to a founder at the earliest stages can be incredibly helpful. And for you as an investor, is an amazing learning experience. So I really applaud anyone, whether they're writing 5K checks or 100K checks as an angel.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Amen. And, I remember you had wanted to invest in CitySourced, and you were so helpful with us. And we had just taken some money from Jack Dangermond, the billionaire founder at Esri, and so I sort of respectfully declined. And you were so gracious about that. And we finally got that business sold after a 14-year journey last year, which gave me the sort of little space to be able to quit a great job at Hunt Club and start something new. So, again,
the success doesn't happen overnight, right? A
Yeah.
lot of times people get caught in the fantasy that these unicorns, and many are paper unicorns, but a lot of people believe these great businesses in tech somehow get started and exit in 5 years. And the reality is that most incredible value takes a decade or longer.
Yeah. And in my case, like the check wasn't a huge check, but it was QSBS, so I didn't have to pay Uncle Sam. And I had made enough money along the way, making great money, sort of as a journeyman go-to-market BD guy, and learning how to invest my own capital and doing real estate deals and so forth. So it was a kind of a get-rich-slow kind of thing in my case.
Yeah.
I think kind of rewinding to you, your story is fascinating. You grew up in Sacramento. I think you grew up like dirt poor, right? Sacramento area.
Yeah,
right?
Sort of, because the first 5 years of my life, I lived out of the back of a car.
Yeah.
My parents kind of drove around. Really, my dad. We squatted in abandoned properties until finally my grandparents, my grandfather Paige Craig, who incredible World War II vet, and Pearl Harbor vet, was and my grandma Jean, who did 38 years in the Marine Corps. They told my father that he better settle down and start and take me to school. And so we basically broke down in Sacramento. I remember the night we were like sitting in the car. There's lightning and thunder, and we're like parked in front of this old abandoned Victorian home on the banks of the Sacramento River. And that became our home until fifth grade. And this thing would have scared the crap out of you. It had no electricity. It had no water. It had nothing. We spent years, I remember working with my dad, just fixing this up. And we were squatters. And somewhere we're like, I was like 9, 10. I remember somewhere in grade school, the actual owners show up to the house. And my dad convinces them to let us stay there. And his pitch was like, look, we're good people. We'll watch your property. And hey, maybe we're scraping by. Maybe we could buy this off you someday. Ultimately, it's like CalPERS. I think it's CalPERS or the money. Oh, no, CalPERS. It's like one of the CalPERS units. They are built on top of my childhood home there. And then we, remember fifth grade, we had this like bootstrapped art business. We used to do framing for like local artists in Sacramento. And I worked there. I worked in my dad's little business out of the house from the age of like 6. By fifth grade, we bought this little crack house in Oak Park, California. And for people that don't know Sacramento, Oak Park was like the ghetto. I mean, our first couple of weeks living there, there's a drive-by shooting. The house we buy is so bad. It had been burnt by hobos. There were no floors. We camped outside in tents after buying this house and rebuilt the interior of the house. So I had an interesting background, but my father really valued learning, competition. I played sports. I studied hard. He got me into Sac State. Like he pushed me, got me into Sacramento State University at 13. I was studying Chinese. I volunteered on a political campaign for Lloyd Connolly. That guy won. I worked in the Capitol. He introduced me to Pete Wilson, and they got me recruited into Westpoint when I was 17, and that just changed my life.
Yeah. That's the thing that I, even just getting warm and fuzzy hearing you tell the story, it's you. The thing that I love about you is I feel like you're the same person, you know, now as you were then. I have other friends of mine that I love and respect like that too, that have you know, some pretty famous people that haven't changed. And I just so respect that. Or it's even the success has made them better in a way. And the thing that I always appreciated about you was your curiosity. Like you just really ask, really, you're interested. You're not trying to be interesting. That's one of the things I always learned from Jack Dangerman. He always say, hey, be interested, not interesting.
It's an interesting perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. And your love for learning. I mean, I think you and I celebrate or have a similar commonality where we have a high capacity for input. And so I think that's probably a great segue into the next phase. So you were at Westpoint. And you did 3 years there from my recollection, and then you punched out and enlisted in the Marines. Is that correct?
Yeah, I decided to take another untraditional path. I love my classmates. I love Westpoint as an institution. I was not much of a rule follower, so I was there. I did incredibly well, and I went back and later supported the military. But I was not like this big Army guy. I really suffered in the structure of Westpoint. And I had this incredible tactical officer, and my TAC was this Marine. My TAC was a great Gulf War vet, but my SOLIC instructor was a great Marine, and he told me a lot about the Marine Corps culture, Marine Corps ethos, this like bottom-up small unit philosophy. For me, like I just didn't really care about whether I was an Army officer or a Marine. I just wanted to be. I was very much like in the action. Like to your point, I loved learning, but even more than learning, I've always really enjoyed doing. And I'm the guy that will just give me a tool, give me a book, give me a computer. Like I got, convinced my dad to get me a computer when I was 8 and started building my own video games. I like action. I like the fusion of learning and action. So yes, I left him after my 3rd year. Going into my 1st year, I left. I went into the Marine Corps, had an incredible career, ended up going through Dam Neck, Virginia, graduated first in my class out of the intelligence school, got sent to Asia, and had a great career for many years. And then I moved from the Marine Corps over to the intelligence community, and that kicked off a whole other experience.
Yeah. So you get out of the Marines. I think the story I remember you saying is you were in DC and you were doing some real estate stuff and flipping houses. Is that you were doing that for a minute? Is that right? Is my memory?
No, that was just in parallel to my career. Is that I saw when I joined the intelligence community, I was working out in Northern Virginia, and I just saw, and the context is this is October 2000, and so one, I just bought a house for myself. And I looked around the market, and I wasn't a finance guy really back then by trade, but the interest rate was like sub 2% from Navy Federal Credit Union.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the real estate, and I was like, wow, if you take, this might be a little bit of a nuance, but I started mapping out DC, and I had this feeling that DC was gentrifying because I'd go there and party and have fun at places like the Black Cat and the 930 Club, and I saw this amazing architecture. And when I was shopping for my own home, I was looking at the price of rentals. I was looking at housing costs. And then I saw all these incredible homes that were at the edge of these neighborhoods. And my thought was, wow, I could probably buy these things pretty cheaply, fix them up and rent them out.
Yeah.
So I did that as sort of another way to make money. It also interested me. So I developed my own methodology. I basically mapped out gentrification. And the way I did that is have you ever gone hiking and used like a topographic map where you have those isometric kind of lines around what altitude you're at? I took that concept and built my own system of mapping out price per square foot for rentals, bedrooms, lease rates. I essentially mapped out DC, and I found a couple neighborhoods. And over the course of 3 years, I bought 6 properties and just cash flowed them. And the funny thing is that sort of hobby, which was profitable, turned into the asset that I used to start my real business years later.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And then you got an MBA in parallel to all that too, right?
Years before that, I had the Marine Corps, the Navy, paid for my MBA. But that's one of the great benefits of being in the military is I fully utilized all my education benefits in the Marine Corps. Yeah,
that's incredible. So, what was the moment that you decided to hop on a plane and go to the Middle East and risk your life to do something pretty wild that ended up having a pretty big impact?
It was, I think so in 2000, so my entire time, both when I was in the Marine Corps and in the intelligence community, I was a big advocate and big builder. So I would build technology tools. For example, when I was in the Marine Corps, I received an award from the CNO, sort of like the COO of the Navy. And I received this award for building an intelligence collection system in 1996 while on a ship. And I built a system that allowed us to go out and work across the unclassified internet to go to foreign countries through their educational networks. And I built a 3D projection system to show amphibious forces like what the landing beaches would look like, all kinds of cool stuff. And I was always a technologist, but in 2002, 2003, I was starting to work on this idea of essentially a privatized intelligence team married with an operations team that could go downrange and basically collect intelligence in areas that were difficult for the United States to operate in. And that was my initial idea, was to use technology married with people on the ground to do a mixture of human intelligence and sort of technical intelligence collection on the ground, married with the ability to take action. I'm just being a little bit generic there because
of course.
Most of what we did was what you like call code word access, very classified work that we did for the U.S. government and our allies. And we did that very successfully. I bootstrapped that business. I begged people to invest in me. I had no financial network, but that's why when I look at founders now, I really understand how hard it is when you're someone who comes from a network where you don't have access to money.
When you're an outsider, you're not well to do.
Yeah, and that's what we really. We've definitely backed the insiders from time to time, but our fund is really designed to find those unknown, under-networked, undervalued founders all across the U.S. And I've had huge, multi-billion-dollar companies from that approach. I was that kind of guy who just didn't have access to money. I tried pitching, couldn't do it. I failed utterly. at raising money, bootstrapped it by going back to Navy Federal Credit Union. They gave me an equity line of credit on my rental properties, and I used credit cards, and I bootstrapped that business. I flew to Jordan, and I spent a couple days trying to recruit the right person to take me across the Iraqi border. We crossed the border at like 3 o'clock at night. I was dressed as a CNN reporter, and I went in while the war was going on and just embedded myself in the middle of Iraq. And over a 12-month period, built this network of people from the very northern border with Turkey to Basra in the south, all the way west to Anna to the Iranian border. And I built this network of people and technology. And my pitch to the U.S. government and even private companies was, hey, if you need a piece of information, if you need something done outside the green zone, and the green zone was like the safe area where everyone lived, I was like, I've got this network. I can do anything. And I cast this wide net. I was like, whatever you want done. We got crazy stuff like the SEC, of all places, hired us to find a safe building and secure it for their operations. The 1st Cavalry Division hired us to get rid of a ton of chemical storage things that they thought was a risk to them. The Marine Corps and DARPA were our first 2 customers. DARPA gave us a classified contract to get some equipment. The Marine Corps hired us to conduct a psychological warfare mission, and we were like in the middle of combat supporting the Marine Corps, and that's not what they hired us for. But they hired us for a PSYOP mission, but we just got attacked and had to deal with it. But we did all this crazy stuff. But within a year, kind of like most founders, I realized what the real opportunity was out there was, one, to collect a certain set of specialized intelligence, which we became very good at. And 2 was to conduct these very complex strategic communications and psychological warfare missions involving, video games, movies, print, news, media, and it was all targeted at foreign adversaries and, terrorist groups. But that really became our bread and butter. And it was a fascinating thing. I scaled that across Africa, Afghanistan, Asia, South America. It was a really fun business. And ultimately, it was very hard, but it was very rewarding.
Yeah. You grew at what, to 800 people?
Probably larger than that. There was a lot of teams. I didn't even know how many people we employed, but we were well north of 1,000 folks across all 3 regions.
Yeah, that's incredible, Paige. So you found, when did you found the business and when did you sell it?
So 2003, I think we actually officially formed it in the middle of 2003 and then finalized the sale in 2010.
Okay. Wow. So I met you as when you were still actively involved then. I didn't realize that you were still...
Oh, yeah. That business is still... So even when we sold it, it's still alive today. We were... Yeah. One of the key things is when you can't raise money, you have to run a profitable business, right?
Yeah, amen.
We were very profitable.
Yeah, and sort of fast forward to now. One of the things that I remember you telling me about, and I don't know how vocal you are with this proprietary 38-point founder framework that you've developed, but you seem to. That's one of the things that I always found so fascinating about you. Is I always had a sense that you were looking into me, like x-raying into me at a deeper level than other people. And that was probably just fundamentally because of your training. You probably, just even in the short little bit that you just shared, there was probably, a lot of life and death situations that you dealt with in that context, right?
In the context of my old job?
Lincoln.
It was a very high risk environment. Yeah, we went through. I wouldn't say that frames how I assess people. If you ask me about the assessment side, because I definitely learned a ton from when you think about risk management and also just a perspective on life and how to have purpose and how to have focus. I think when you realize how fragile everything is. Yeah. But also importantly, when you truly see human behavior, it's the best and worst of life that will teach you about human behavior. And so I believe the adversity in those countries, working for years and years and years outside the United States in the Middle East, in Africa, and embedded in embedded with people who are suffering the worst hardship and seeing the very best and also literally the very worst of mankind, you really get a firsthand education on what people are about.
Yeah, amen. I mean, I think that's implicit into the this X-ray ability that you have. You sort of have this spectrum that's very multidimensional in that context, and then you have this.
I'll tell you, but I also think the weird thing is my early childhood. And I wouldn't wish this on anyone. I have a son now and a daughter coming in 3 months, and I always debate would I want them to have the same life I did, because I think it gave me amazing perspective and love for the world. But I also think my upbringing and, the years of suffering in sort of what I did professionally, it's not healthy for most people. And so I think at this stage of my life, I'm turning 50 next year. I really think it's something that I was very lucky to be able to go through these experiences and not have it mess me up.
Yeah.
Like somehow this really twisted, perverted life that I had as a kid, and then a very difficult career that I chose to lead people through, it just luck, I took advantage of that luck to become an investor. And I'd say, you're asking about the founder framework. It's a 38-point founder framework. What it is a written account of how I analyze people. I do not share it. And the reason I don't share it, one is I would like our fund to be the best pre-seed fund in the world. And I choose not to share in my 20 years of lessons because I would like my team to be number one in the world. But second, because I do tell everyone that if you want to be a great investor, particularly at the early stage, the number one most deterministic thing in a startup success is its founders. That is the number one thing, because those founders will build the team, set the strategy, make the course corrections necessary, and stick with the business to create the value that investors need, right? So now as a company gets later on in life, you can analyze the product and the customers, and there's lots of different ways to become a great investor. But if you're someone like me coming in early stage, my specialty is to go out there and find a very rare person that has, and we all those 38 characteristics come into 4 domains: vision, intelligence, character, and execution. Mm-hmm. We go out there and we find people that have those 4 domains, like the highest level of vision, intelligence, character, execution, but also they're going through markets and certain business models that we are predicting will be huge returners over the next decade. But it really is about picking the right people. And so my mixture of training in the military, in the intelligence community, my practical experience picking people. One of the biggest things I did overseas is I built teams of, pretty exceptional, interesting folks. We were targeting a different type of person, but the fundamental concept is if you're going to go after certain types of people, you have to understand them. You have to understand why they perform or outperform in certain environments. And so that same discipline that I applied in the intelligence community, I applied it to the angel investing and then the venture capital world. And that's what I've been doing for the last 14 years. I mean, along the way, I've also now learned from, many amazing mentors, things I never thought of, like, how you think about resource allocation in a fund, how you think about strategy. And there's many amazing parts, but the very basic pillar of our business was analyze people and realize that you're picking an exceptional, just a really rare type of person. And I codified that with our founder framework.
Yeah. How, maybe using me as a guinea pig. I've grown a bunch since we spent a lot of time together. So we'll take your feedback with a grain of salt. If you're comfortable sharing, how would you analyze me in that framework? What would be the strengths and weaknesses?
So we don't share. So the problem is if we, right? So the way we do it is like,
how about in a generic way? Could you kind of obfuscate it generically?
If probably not. We just never. So we use it internally, and I have a very strict rule that I enforce with my partners. We have 5 investing partners. We have 2 incredible ops folks. Brilliant ladies who lead the business, and we have a very strict rule. We don't tell people how we vote, and we don't teach people the founder framework, and that means anyone. And so I don't break that rule either. And so back to my point, like I don't want people to game the system. There's lots of smart people. You're not going to game the system. You do well. But, founders are brilliant people. Even, like people, there's so much information. They'll go out there and research and read and listen to your podcast. And I get all these founders all the time who are like, Paige, I read this, I read that. I know you did this. Like, and I'll tell people highlights. Look, I've been very obvious. I want incredibly visionary, smart, high character, high execution founders. But the exact details of what we're looking for and how we measure it, I'm not giving that secret sauce away. I don't want people to try to become something they're not.
Well, that's fair. And even with the, dawn of AI, started really accelerating, I'm sure that be able to do research on this kind of stuff is only going to get even faster and better. So fair enough. You have built an incredible team. You introduced me to Blaine Davis a couple years back.
Yeah, he's incredible. Great guy.
And the guy, he's such a special guy. I just love that guy. Yeah. So great job on the team.
Yeah. And Blaine, again, brilliant hard worker, but also a lot of respect. He just wrapped up his 5 years of cancer free.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that online.
Crazy scare. And, it's interesting how much near-death experiences will teach you about, help you understand what's important in life. And he's a great human. He, Laura, Bailey, Blaine, Lucas, Layla, and Anna on the IR side, like the whole team is just like really incredible people. And that's the best thing about being an early stage fund is, I get to build this like special operations unit, this really small team of tier one silent professionals who just get stuff done and go out there and find the best founders in the world and help them out.
So let's dig into that, double click into Outlander VC. Third fund, 150 million AUM on this next one. Under 150, so you don't have to register it as an investment advisor. Is that right?
No, we're an RIA now.
You're an RIA?
Yeah, we manage like $500 million in assets. We've been a very high top 1% fund for the last decade in DPI and TVPI. So no, but we transitioned to an RIA this year.
Wow, congrats. It's a big deal. A lot of accountability. You're a fiduciary. It's
it's like all the emails, all the text, all the, there's lots of rules, but at the end of the day, a lot of people bitch and moan about regulation and all this stuff. But the reality is, you look around at the scams, and the reality is, like, if you're an investor, you have a fiduciary duty.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't bitch about the requirements that the government puts on us to make sure that we're looking out for our investors' best interests.
We
don't love it, but like, who wakes up in the morning and says, man, I really, really want to renew my driver's license. I really just want to brush my teeth today. But like, there's basic stuff you got to do to be a responsible human. So it's not that bad.
Yeah, even more so when you're managing people's money. So, and institutions, nonetheless, too. There's been a lot of bad actors, unfortunately. But
so much crap the last few years.
Yeah, Bernie Madoff. I mean, he sort of helped. He was one of the guys behind NASDAQ. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
What are you excited to share about in the context of Outlander that you're comfortable sharing? Let's talk about, maybe the thesis, if there's certain, we've talked, we know early stage, maybe talk about check size, anything else around that can give the listener context. And then some other questions I'm interested in are like, things that, maybe founders or the market takes for granted or might be naive about around some of the challenges you guys have to deal with and the complexity, but maybe we focus on the bright and shiny bit first.
Yeah. So a few things. I'll tell you a little bit about why we exist, why we think we're different. So our target audience are founders that are ideally unknown, under-networked, undervalued. I say that all the time because we are generally not looking for a YC graduate. We are generally not looking for a Stanford guy or girl who, has every blessing in the world and every connection in the world. And they're going to be great. They can be great founders. But what I'm really looking for is that exceptional but unknown founder. And that could be unknown because of geography, because of school, because of family, or just being heads down. Like Peter from Wish, built, almost a $30 billion company. I mean, had a bad IPO later, but, as an early investor, built a huge business from nothing. He was in the heart of Silicon Valley. So was Naval from AngelList, So is Josh Reeves from Gusto. And you can find exceptional people. I just stay away from hot deals. And the reason is like, one, I think too much money really corrupts founders early. And I think there's great value created when there are restrictions on the money given to a founder early.
Amen.
But you need to have those restrictions. Second, as soon as a person or an idea of an app becomes obviously too good, like a Clubhouse, and every investor is chasing that deal, my advice to most investors for most strategies is run from that. You do not want to chase hot deals. I made the mistake as an angel. I made a couple of mistakes a couple times as a fund one. But it's something I've learned, which is go out there and find the unknown great things in life and invest in those. So we invest all across the United States. In the last 12 months, we've taken over 4,000 pitches, which sounds insane, but we really shifted when we saw COVID coming. We used to be very concentrated doing, San Francisco, LA, New York, very common places to hunt for unicorns. We shifted our strategy to being very digital. And so we've spent a lot of the last 4 years focused on building a online community of tens of thousands of founders and angels, building a brand and communicating with founders in 30 cities across the U.S. And so we're really looking for founders who are anywhere in the U.S. building in a handful of sectors. And we're pretty agnostic, but there are things we don't invest in. We won't touch gaming, drugs, gambling, content-heavy businesses, CPG, alternative proteins. And it's nothing against those. Well, some of those we do, I'm opposed to some of those models, but like content and gaming and other areas, CPG, food, they're just things that, one, we're not specialists in, or two, I don't look at them as tech companies that get the leverage, because my job is to go out there and, one, our whole team, we find exceptional people building unique technology companies that can rapidly scale once we hit product market fit and give, massive leverage through that technology. And so you'll see investors out there doing, businesses around shoe. They'll invest in shoe companies and protein businesses. And I respect those companies, but for me, they're just not things that I think are VC fundable. So we don't do that. And what really we really specialize in, because of that founder framework and because we look at people all around the country, is we like to invest when a founder has no revenue, quite often no product, no customers, and we write a first check. We'll write the first $1 million into a founding team, like pre everything, right? You just have to come to us as a great team with a great vision of where you want to go, and we will give founders their first $1 million. We will then follow on at the seed and at the Series A, and we back up our best founders as they scale.
Yeah. Is there a ratio that you have kind of landed on as far as follow on? So for the 150 million,
so
how much would be first money and how much would be follow on by percentage?
It's a little bit over this, but it's roughly 50% goes into the first check. So like our next fund will be 50 to 55 pre-seed checks. And that could be, $750 to almost $2 million first money into a company. And then 25% of the capital is reserved to lead or co-lead the seed. And the remaining 25% is reserved to follow on into a handful of the very best Series A deals.
Yeah. You were the one that told me about unit economics for the first time, CAC to LTV. I remember you came to my office probably 2010 in Westwood, and you're like, Curdy, like, what's the unit economics? I'm like, what?
I remember that conversation.
Yeah. And you came in and, we kind of opened up the book, I had Salesforce running, and we were looking at, the lead conversion, and you're like, you know what, we were able to get like a basic number, and you're like, all right, let's just track this over the next couple of quarters. And I so appreciated that about you. And in that context, around the kind of businesses you like to focus on, that, essentially tech business, is the obvious one is gross margins. I mean, is there a minimum gross margin you're looking for? I know software a lot of times the 80%, but how do you think about that?
No, because even though I talked to you about CAC LTV, and I will talk to founders about that eventually, most people we meet, CAC LTV means nothing, and neither does gross margin.
Yeah.
Because I'm generally investing in someone who is probably at idea stage.
Yeah, of
and,
course.
and talking to customers, and they're
Yeah.
trying to figure out what opportunity or problem they're going to address. Or it's someone who has an MVP and maybe they have, a few tens of thousands of dollars of revenue. But really it's about finding out who is your ideal customer. Are you serving them well? Are you building a product, that they absolutely need and will pay for? We're focused a lot more on first, like, hey, are you the right team? And then who is your customer? What's the problem? And at the end of the day, business and investing is pretty simple. If you get the people right, you're really trying to figure out what value am I creating in the world, right? That's most, like, for most founders, you have to figure out, like, how am I creating value? And there's a lot of math and process and building sales teams and product that eventually comes into that. But a lot of mistakes that are made in the early days is founders lie to themselves about creating value, or they just get it wrong and they overestimate the value they're creating.
Yeah.
Sometimes they underestimate it and they don't price it right. But I spend a lot of time really helping founders think about what is it that you're doing for your customer. And it's sometimes a complex question because sometimes you are on the right track. You have the right idea for the world, but you've picked the wrong customer set to start with. Or you've picked the right customer in the right segment, but your value prop's a little bit off. We just did a fireside chat yesterday with Blake Hall, combat veteran, 2 Bronze Stars, hunted ISIS down in Iraq, amazing guy, came back. I was his first investor. Kelly Purdue brought me the deal along with David Tisch. And this guy's built a multi-billion-dollar company running identity management. And he has 100 million people using his identity service. And the U.S. government, it's like 16 states or 30 states, 16 federal agencies, 600 organizations, the biggest retailer in the world. And this guy started off with the value prop of trying to essentially be living social for the military. And what he found out through that process is that one of the biggest things he was doing well was verifying that someone was actually a veteran or someone was actually law enforcement. And he pivoted the company. He took a while to understand it, the right amount of time to analyze the situation. And he went from being a platform for these great deals for military members to being an identity system, right? And he now has built this killer business that's probably $100 billion company in the next decade. And he really paid attention to value creation. And we had many amazing chats, and the other investors gave him great mentorship. But he was the founder who took control of his ship and steered it a little bit into where he really saw value. And that, so to answer your question simply, most of our discussions in the first year do not involve CAC LTVs or margins. That usually happens once we start to get beyond seed stage into Series A.
Yeah, that's probably more for the follow-on, right?
Yeah.
And I guess there's 2 things in that. One, I was just trying to understand, just as an investor speaking to another investor, like, what is it that you like about the tech business that maybe I might not be appreciating, that are like beyond the obvious things like gross margin and stuff like that. So,
what do I like about tech? I mean, what I like about tech is that fundamentally, as a founder and as an investor, you get to back the founders who do this. With technology, you get to create agents, whether software or hardware, that do unique work and that do scalable work that humans cannot, right? Like when you're building business, you could be in the service industry and you can hire people to make video games or write comic books or build homes. Or as a tech founder, you can create software or hardware that does those same things. So you could be a software developer and you create a generative AI platform that spits out amazing comic books that are tailored to every children's unique needs, so they learn life lessons and are entertained. That is a far more scalable and high margin business than employing thousands of writers to create individual comic books for kids, right? Or you can be a founder who creates robots that build affordable homes for humanity, and you start to spin out $5,000 homes that actually bring home ownership to the entire world, but creates incredible value for your investors. So technology really gives you new capabilities that no human, or you can't harness any natural resources or human or animal to do it. You create software and or hardware together to create new capabilities. Two, it's scalable because that technology can work, as long as it has inputs of energy and data, that technology works. And that's why you get the high margin. So that is what's really special about technology, is that it can scale quickly, meaning you can have an impact within your lifetime, right? And two, you can create new capabilities that advance life and business.
Yeah, and if you could wrap some kind of reoccurring revenue on top of it, then that's icing on the cake.
But the revenue part's only a measure. Like if you build true value, right? If you build incredible value for customers and you run your business well, you will get revenue. So it's like if I sat down and looked at my portfolio and said, hey, if I only cared about revenue and margin and revenue growth, you'd really miss who your best companies are, because your winners in the first, many years of a portfolio, it isn't the revenue. I mean, those are indicators, right? But it's one of the vital signs, but it's not critical in the early days. Now, long term, if you're talking about, companies that are going to IPO, public companies, there's different arguments around, whether you look at, net quarterly revenue, like what is the measure that matters? But in my world, my job is to find incredibly special people who can create incredible value and create profitable companies eventually that change the world. But things like the margins and annual revenue don't really have much impact until we get to kind of Series B stage.
Yeah, that must be so fun. Almost like a parent, watching the child grow and find a vocation and be activated when you can back a parent, back a founder. And, in that story that you just kind of described where they, the founder, it took them a minute to really understand what the value is. And then they sort of discover what the market fit is and lock it in and focus and scale that out. That must be like such a high to be able to experience that. How does it, is that fair to say?
I'd say it can be, but I also warn people, this is not a business where, especially early stage, you're generally very critical to the business's life in the early days.
Yeah.
But you will get very little recognition for it. And this is probably why I really enjoy it. I didn't need recognition for what I did overseas. And I tried to recruit people who didn't need recognition. Like you do it because I didn't need recognition. And I'm also like looking for, other investors who do early stage. You need to do this because you believe in the business, you believe in the founder, and you fundamentally enjoy being a great investor. You have to be more of a coach, right? You have to be okay being in the shadows, because the reality is your founders should generally end up in the limelight. Your founders and their companies will be showcased. And you'll see a lot of investors want to stroke their egos. And we market our great companies too, but we market it because we want to have great founders come to us to get that first check. But the reality is, like, if you emotionally want to be congratulated and patted on the back, I mean, dude, I've got almost 20 unicorns under my belt. And I'll tell you, like, I have a great relationship with many of those founders, but other founders I barely talk to these days. And it's like they're so focused and they're building incredible companies. And the reality is, like, you play a very important but small part in the beginning of these businesses, but you will not get recognized. If you want the recognition, probably the best place to sit is to be that late stage VC who runs $1 billion fund. You can spend, $20 million a year on marketing and advertising and events. You can write that Series B, Series C check and sit on the board and tell everyone how much of a genius you were when you funded them because you're doing $50 million in revenue. But like, and it's not that, like, that's a world for certain types of people. But I love the early days, the hard days, because it really is like these early days are the best days when you don't know if it's going to work. When you're like 0 to 1, but even more than the 0 to 1, it's like you find a founder with a vision, but they're like, they have no idea how to sell. They have no idea how to build a pipeline. They have no idea how to build a team. Like, but they have everything they need. They've got high character, high work ethic, incredible vision. And you just do a little mentorship. And then once you point them in the right direction and help put some guardrails around them, they do 99.9% of the work. And it is a lot like having kids, where it's like, look, if you want to be congratulated for how awesome your kid is, that's probably not a good parent. What you should do is you should have this intrinsic love for these kids, for these founders that you're helping. And you should really want the best in life for them. and what they want to do. And I think that's the best attitude as an early stage investor.
Yeah, amen. So for the audience, if they have if a founder that feels like they'd be a fit for Outlander, or somebody hears they want to make a referral in, what's a good way for the audience to get in touch with you guys?
They can go to our website. They can go to our LinkedIn. Any one of us, we practice this discipline. We read every email. We look at every LinkedIn. And like I said before, we took over 4,000 pitches last year. We look at it all. And if you're not a fit, read up about us. If you're too late, wrong sector, you'll get rejected. And I don't mean any insult by that, but we have a very narrow focus on early stage technology. But if you do fit, you'll get invited to talk to a partner or go to one of our office hours to do a pitch session. And we'd love to hear from you. Go to our website, outlander.vc. Go to my LinkedIn or any one of our partners' LinkedIn and apply to us.
Yeah. And you guys are also welcome to shoot me a note, and I'm happy to forward it to Paige. Paige, Craig, it's so good to see you, my friend. I love you like a brother. There's so many stories we didn't even get into, like the amazing Tahoe ski accident where I had to toboggan you out. And I'm so glad that you lived, because you broke so many bones.
I don't know how I survived that one, man, but you were there.
Can't wait to see you hopefully in New York soon. Have a wonderful rest of your summer, and stay awesome, my friend.
Thank you, buddy. Have a great day, man.
Thanks again to my friend Paige Craig for being our guest. I so appreciate his humility, honesty, and the game he's playing to even the playing field. I'm at Curdy D on Twitter and Instagram, also Kurt Derricks on LinkedIn. Please do give us a rating and a review at ratethispodcast.com/Curdy D. It does help spread the word. Until next time, Curdy D loves you.